Welcome to Keep Calm and Triage. I'm Derek Toops, and I'm going to be walking you through a little bit of research and some strategies for supporting crying infants. So let's get into it. First off, let's talk about the importance of responsive care. So we know that crying is normal. It's a healthy part of infant development. Because infants don't yet have verbal language, they use their cries as well as their facial expressions and their physicality or physical movements to communicate their needs. So even though it can be overwhelming whenever children cry, it's normal and it's up to us as the adults or caregivers in the classroom to understand the reasons behind those cries so that we can respond to children. So here in Louisiana, the child to adult ratio for an infant classroom is 5 to 1. So 5 infants for every one adult. And if you have ever been around one crying child, much less two, three, or four, or even five, it is very overwhelming. Yep, that's what it sounds like, but you can multiply that by a few. So a little bit of research here. So just by hearing an infant cry, as you just did now, your brain was 2 times more likely to go into an activation response than if you heard, say, a dog barking or some other sort of noise in the environment. So, research from Parsons and a few of their colleagues show that there is a part deep in the brain that whenever infants cry stimulates the fight or flight survival response and just goes to underscore the importance of us being able to just being physically hardwired or neurally hardwired to respond to infants' cries. And a little bit more research or theory, rather. So Eric Erickson's trust versus mistrust stage highlights the need for consistency and responsiveness. So what this means is that infants, as they are crying, as I mentioned, they are communicating their needs. And whenever the adults around them consistently respond to their cries and resolve those issues, infants learn that the world is a safe place to be and they develop trust instead of mistrust, which if they develop mistrust because their needs are inconsistently met or not met, then that will negatively impact the formation of relationships throughout the rest of their life. So simply by responding to infants' cries, which we are hardwired in our brains to do so, we are setting foundations for success for children. All right, so let's talk about meeting the needs of the teacher first. Keep calm and breathe. Let's take a deep breath together. We breathe in for a few seconds into our diaphragm, and then we breathe out for a few seconds. Wow, I feel calm. If you did that, you probably feel calm because there are physiological changes that occur in our bodies whenever we take deep breaths, 5 to 7 second inhales into our diaphragm, 5 to 7 second exhales. So, um, deep breathing stimulates the vagus nerve, which reduces stress by lowering blood pressure and by lowering heart rate. And it promotes relaxation because it helps diminish the levels of cortisol in our bodies. So, whenever we are in stressful situations, such as a classroom with multiple infants who are crying, before we jump in to respond to those needs, taking a deep breath can prime our adult bodies and brains to be in a better place, both mentally and physically, to meet the needs of children. And by doing so, that helps us as adults provide a warm and reassuring presence for the infants in our care. So let's talk a little bit about why infants cry. As I mentioned, crying is the primary way infants communicate with us. It's normal and healthy, but there are two main reasons why infants cry. Typically, it's going to be because they are expressing a physical need, such as hunger or discomfort, fatigue or overstimulation, or an emotional need, such as loneliness, frustration, or fear. And it's worth noting that some children with colic or certain temperaments might just be more prone to crying. And even though we have gone through the checklist of those physical needs, they have a bottle, they have a fresh diaper, they've just woken up from a nap, the environment is calm, they just might be more prone to crying. So it's important to get to know the individual needs and unique temperaments of children so that we can better understand and then respond to them. So, what to do when infants cry? So first, once you um, understand why that child is crying, you then want to map that to how to resolve it. So, for example, let's actually go back. So, for those physical needs, if a child is hungry, that's pretty straightforward. Heat them up a bottle or get their food, and then you can then resolve that hunger because they'll be sated. They might be uncomfortable. So maybe they rolled onto a cold surface. Maybe they're stuck because they're just learning how to move. So resolving that acute discomfort can help them. Maybe they're also teething. So a teether or a pacifier, if that's appropriate for that child, could be helpful. Fatigue, if the child is tired, see to it that that child gets their nap and that the environment is set for them to be restful. Or overstimulation. Are the lights too bright? Are there too many crying children? Um, is there loud music on? So look at the physical environment and what things might be overstimulating children's senses, and then try to flip the script on those. Even taking children out into the fresh air, if you're able to do that, or opening up a window, just providing that sensory change can be helpful. So whenever infants are crying, attend to multiple children at once when possible. Say you have two children crying and you've deduced that this child is hungry and this child is tired. Can you pick up the tired child and start to comfort them and get ready for a nap while you are heating up the bottle for the other child? You can probably do that. And then while you're heating that bottle up and you're rocking the tired child to sleep, you can be um, verbally communicating with the child who is hungry, saying, I'm getting your bottle ready, just a few more minutes until we'll get something to eat. So you're acknowledging the feelings of two different children. This can be physically demanding, but whenever you have multiple crying children, efficiency is key. You want to try to meet those as many needs at the same time as possible. Use a warm voice, use touch, use physical proximity. Again, it's key to comforting children. So while we're also understanding or triaging what those core needs are behind those cries, we still want to create that warm and safe space and environment. We talked a little bit about adjusting the environment, change the lighting, reduce noise, play soft music, go outside for fresh air. What not to do when infants cry? Don't yell. Again, warm, calm voice. Whenever we yell, we are going to heighten the environment, both the noise as well as the potential for anxiety or fear because there are loud noises. So we want to um, not yell and be calm. We don't want to dismiss children's emotions. Oh, you're fine. You're okay. We have, I think, a natural tendency to do that, especially once you get to know a child. But at the end of the day, that child is crying because they are communicating a need. Don't dismiss their emotions. Figure out what that need is, and then make a plan to resolving it. And then distraction. This is an easy go-to that I think we as teachers and as parents rely on too frequently. Distraction should not be our constant go-to. Now, if you have three or four children who are crying and you know that you can distract one child temporarily, that is a tool in your toolkit. But whenever you constantly distract, that prevents you from addressing that underlying root cause of the crying. So that's something to be aware of. All right, setting up for success. What are a couple things you can do proactively to set your classrooms and your children and yourself up for success? Get to know the infant's temperament and their daily schedule. I talked about temperament, so knowing who is a little more prone to being fussy, who's going to have a more regular routine. So look at Chess and Thomas's 9 temperaments of children and kind of know where each child in your classroom falls on those. And then the daily schedule. If you know that a child is eating every 2 to 3 hours, then whenever you can preempt that hunger or those cries for hunger by having a bottle ready, that's going to create a more calm environment. And then also it's going to distress the child less because you're anticipating their needs. And then also model positive parent-teacher relationships. So there's some research by Thomas and colleagues from just a couple of years ago that show that because infants are so observant, whenever they see their parents interacting with other adults positively, the infants are going to be more prone to having positive and more comfortable relationships with those adults that their parents were engaging in those positive interactions with. So as much as infants can observe you as a teacher interacting positively and warmly with their parents, they are going to more quickly feel safe and comfortable with you. So that's all I have for you today. Hopefully that little bit of research and those strategies for um, helping children whenever they are crying will be helpful for you. And let me leave you with two questions. The first is, think back to some of your classroom experiences whenever children have been crying, and think about the reasons, if you can, why those children were crying. Did you perhaps mistake one cry for another? Say a hunger cry for a frustrated cry? And then as a corollary to that question, how might you better predict the cries of children and then respond to those cries? So think about your own experiences, and just do some self-reflection to see, um, you know, the differences in cries that you can come up with. And then the second question is, think about these strategies for setting up your classrooms for success proactively. Which one of these resonates with you most? And then which one can you implement if you're not already implementing? All right, thanks a lot and appreciate the attention.